Hello, AP Psychology. Welcome to part 2 of memory. Today we're going to be looking at storage. So remember, there are three parts to memory. There's encoding, getting the memory in, there's storage, and there's retrieval. I hope that you all took a chance to not only watch the video for part 1, but also read the textbook for some really good tips on encoding and some important concepts there. Now, I had you guys write down for Tuesday's assignment emotional events, your earliest memory rather. And we can see from the slide here that we remember emotional events the best. The reason why so many parts of our brain are active when we have an emotional memory that is made. We have the amygdala, we have the hippocampus, we have the hypothalamus, and all of these things help us to remember emotional events better. And oftentimes our earliest memory are of something important and emotional. I really had fun reading your emotional, or rather your earliest memories today, and they were really cute. And some of you I felt really bad, like the person who had to see their grandpa kill a mouse or something like that. But obviously that was something that left an impression with you. Here is a picture of a grandpa with his grandchildren. They look very happy, and perhaps these children remember meeting their grandpa or doing something with their grandpa. Well, today we're going to be looking at storage and some concepts regarding storage. First of all, capacity and duration. Now, when it comes to our sensory memory, this is very rapid. We have two kinds of memory that are where we get most of our, or two senses that we get most of our memories from. Iconic refers to our visual memory. So if you take a pencil or pen and put it in front of you and wave it, you'll see that there's a sort of an after image that you see. That's because our iconic memory lasts about a quarter to a half second, and that's how long it takes or how long you have to try to put that memory from your sensory memory into your stage 2, which is working in short-term memory. Your iconic memory lasts a little bit longer, say 2 to 4 seconds. Let's say you ask your friend a question like, hey, do you want to go for a walk today? And they completely ignore you for a couple seconds, and then you say, hey, and then they know exactly what you said. This happened to me all the time with my kids. They would ask me what was for dinner, and I never really wanted to answer. And then they would say, Mom, and then I'd go, oh, well, spaghetti or whatever. So for some reason, in our auditory memory, we are able to maintain that sensory memory for up to 4 seconds before we need to pay attention to it. Now, normally I would give you a test of your working in short-term memory. This is a place that a lot of people think short-term and working memory lasts for a couple of days. It really only lasts for 20 seconds. That's not very long. So it's not like an actual place in our brain. It's more of a concept. So let's say I'm going to give you a math problem right now. Have you solve it in your head. So your echoic memory, this is where you're getting the math problem. I'm going to give you the problem 5 plus 7 in parentheses divided by 2. Okay, so you've heard it in your sensory memory. You go into your long-term memory, you pull your math facts that 5 plus 7 is 12, and then you remember that the question asked you about 12, then divided by 2, and so the answer is 6. So our working memory is this figurative place where we do problem solving, where we combine information from our sensory memory and our long-term memory. Now, I am going to give you a little memory test. I'm going to read you a list of numbers, and after I read the list, pause, and then see if you can write down the numbers from memory. So here are the numbers. Ready? And then after I read through the numbers, then write them down. Here you go. 1 7 7 6 1 8 6 5 1 9 4 1 2 0 0 1. Write. Okay, while you write, pause the recording. All right, now let's see how you did. I gave you the numbers 1 7 7 6 1 8 6 5 1 9 4 1 2 0 0 1. Now that's 16 numbers. If any of you got that, I would be really surprised because the capacity of our short-term memory is said to be 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information. So on average, most people would only remember 7 pieces of memory. This is really obvious when I do the test in class. I put a graph up on the board, and it turns out that you guys are just as average as the rest of the world, and you remember approximately, on average, 7 items of information. However, there's something that you can do that increases the capacity of your short-term memory. So I'm going to read the same 16 digits, but in a different way this time, and I'm going to ask you to pause and write them down and see how you do. So here you go. 1776, 1865, 1941, 2001, right. Okay, so if you got 1776, 1865, 1941, and 2001, then you got it correct. So basically what you had was 4 chunks of information. Each of them are 4 numbers, 4 digits put together, and in this case, they happen to be 4 important days, years in American history. So if you can add meaning to those chunks of information, that's even going to expand even further your working memory. 1776, Declaration of Independence; 1865, when Lincoln was assassinated; 1941, bombing of Pearl Harbor; 2001, terror attacks in the United States. Okay, your long-term memory, you may not believe this because sometimes it feels like we just have like a memory block or something. There's no limit to that. In numerous research studies have showed that if we're using the right kind of encoding techniques, that we can store untold amounts of information. And it's really cool as you get older, like you just find out, hey, I can keep learning and learning and learning and learning. It's wonderful as long as you let yourself do it. And these memories last potentially a lifetime. You know, I think high school reunions are kind of interesting because sometimes someone will say something to you that you haven't thought about maybe in 20 years. I had this happen to me, and someone said, oh, I was so embarrassed when XYZ happened. And it came out of my memory. I hadn't thought about it in 20 years. I didn't really care. It wasn't an important event to me, but it was still there. And so that's kind of a really cool thing that we have, is that these memories that you haven't accessed for years and years and years with the right retrieval cue, and we're going to talk about those in our next lesson, you're going to be able to pull those out. Now, this is a fire. This is actually a memory of a fire that happened at my husband's uncle's place. And fire, of course, is a dramatic thing. So you're going to have some memories regarding fire. Now, what I'd like you to do, and I think you can see, hopefully you can see my screen here. And I'm going to write the word fire in the center. And I'm going to see what fire makes me think of. So, and I'll show you this board when I'm done. Fire makes me think of my cabin because we have a lot of campfires at my cabin. And campfires make me think of my husband, who doesn't like fires. And I don't like that he doesn't like fires because I wish he would join us. But the reason why he doesn't like fires is that his house burned down. And like, who would like a fire after seeing flames looking out of your window, right? So his house burned down, and that happened to be a house in Japan. Now, this is interesting because Japan makes me think of World War II, which I am teaching about in AP World History right now. And that makes me think of my Edina students. And this is making me think of Covenant Pines, which is a camp that some of my Edina students go to. And by the way, they have a really cool fire pit at Covenant Pines, so that kind of brings me back to fire. So this is what we call, if you can see this, this is my chart right here of memories that remind me of fire. So again, I'd like you to pause the recording and write out what fire makes you think of. Okay, so how do we organize long-term memories? Um, I don't want you to copy this one because I had you start with fire and I had you do your own. But this is a model that's called the associative model or the semantic network model. Memories consist of mental clusters of interconnected information. So this is why something called spreading activation is why when we might be with our friends and we say, remember the time when we went to the Mall of America? And before you know it, you're talking about playing Monopoly at somebody's house. It's because the activation of one memory triggers the activation of related memories. And our memories are kind of like a giant sponge. And there are so many inroads into our different memories, as illustrated by this diagram. And they're basically connected by words. So people that don't have language, their memory works a little bit different. But for most of us, this interconnected information is actually words or what we call concepts, which we're going to talk about on another day. So if you can, again, do that example with fire, what does that make you think of? I have had amazing stories that people share in class about how indeed fire can end up, making you think about swimming at the pool in the summer. Um, so that's how our memories are organized. Now, this is the last thing I wanted to get to today, and this is really, really important. And in fact, your assignment for this day is going to be to come up with an example of each of these memories. We have two types of memory stores. We have our explicit memory, which relies on the hippocampus. And remember, when we talk about explicit, this means this is something we can consciously recall. All right, so that is divided further into two parts. Semantic, which is our knowledge and our facts. That's like our encyclopedia of memories. I know that Mexico is south of the United States. Okay, that is something that I know. An episodic memory is your life stories. These are the things that give you the narrative of your life. So I remember when I went to Mexico with my mom and dad into Puerto Vallarta, and I remember when we played cards on the deck, and I remember when we took walks on the boardwalk. So I know that I went to Mexico, which is south of the American border, but I remember when I went with my mom and dad. Those are going to require the hippocampus. This is the part of memory that starts going when someone has Alzheimer's. They are going to forget the more recent facts and knowledge that they've acquired. They're not going to be able to form new life stories eventually, and this is something that's particularly tragic for families with people who are suffering from Alzheimer's. Now, the implicit memory store, we call this non-declarative because these are things that we don't think about. So for procedural memory, I've talked about this before. This is in your cerebellum. These are your skills and motor actions. So even though someone like my dad who has Alzheimer's cannot remember episodes of his life or knowledge and facts, he remembers how to hold a spoon and feed himself. He remembers how to walk. He remembers how to put his clothes on. And actually, when he starts losing those memories, that's when, he's really moved on to a more advanced state. And then your classically conditioned responses are also considered implicit memory. So even if I have advanced Alzheimer's and I hate mice and rodents, if a mouse is going to run across my foot, I'm going to jump up and I'm going to be like, whoa, really surprised at this. So the other thing is that we can continue to form classically conditioned responses even if we are in an advanced state of Alzheimer's or dementia. So I'm going to be posting a question, and I'm going to ask you to describe one of each of these four types of memory for attendance for today. The last thing I'd like you to do is I'm going to post the video of this man, Clive Waring. Clive Waring lost all of his explicit memory, but he retained the implicit memories, especially the memory of the love of his life, Deborah. So please watch this video of Clive wearing along, of course, with this video today, and then answer the questions for today. Thank you so much.